Good morgen and happy Tuesday to you. I hope that this week has just been amazing for you as it has been for me. Although some personal medical situations with, of course, my mother. She is doing well. Thank you for your prayers and thank you for your energy. She's recovered almost fully, and so I am very back to being relaxed and stress free as we move forward. Today, as we get started, I want to, as always, I want to call out New Reality TV, newrealitytv.com, a collection of a bunch of creators who just have your best interests in their hearts, trying to help educate, enlighten, and inform all of those around the world who really just need kind of that one piece of intellect or that one piece of just information that can help them move to their next level of their evolution through this lifetime. So I want to give a huge shout out for those. Thank you so much to Karen Kvelog. Hopefully I said that right. Thank you so much, Karen, for your repeated donations each morning. Those are so much, so appreciated. Thank you very much. And to Vikel Tackett, who supports us on our Patreon site, thank you so much. Today, we're talking about courage, but there's a lot to courage. It's not a one size fits all. There are many different facets of our courage. And so, some of those things will include things like being ourselves, standing up for what's right, standing up for what we believe in, holding our ground, don't letting influential energies convert us away from what we believe and what we know. This is so critical to this. Your mental space is made up of what you put there. So, if we decide to delve into and dwell on those things that we cannot change, i.e., our past, chances are that's what's going to occupy space up there. It's going to occupy some of that bandwidth, and it's going to make it harder for us to deal with things as they come about. I'm always impressed. An old saying my father used to say before he passed was not letting people live rent-free within your mind. Not letting people have an effect on you, having influential energy that comes in and kind of resides within the mind longer than it needs to. Obviously, as we learn and grow and change and evolve through our lifetimes, these are important factors and they are driven by these influential energies. However, there needs to have some value to it, some value for you. Now, the God tier represents to many folk, particularly in the Norse beliefs, he was a lot more orientated or a lot more recognized for his insane amount of courage. Courage to put his hand in the mouth of a giant wolf, that giant wolf would be chained, would accept the chains that were made by the dwarves. This willingness to sacrifice, and that's really what it was, to sacrifice his hand for the betterment of all the realms, is something that really stood out to the Norse from the god tier. Now, if we go further back in time, back to my ancestry in the central lands of Germania, we find Tyr kind of taking on another role, and that's that of justice, balance, right? And so he was the god of law and justice when he was recognized by the Germanic tribes pre Norse or pre Scandinavian recognition, if you will. So, if we move further back, we see Tyr kind of taking on a different role. Now, when I begin to learn about Tyr, particularly Tyr in my family history, is fairly important because my great-grandfather, whom I've now communicated with, was named after him. And his name, my great-grandfather's name, of course, is Tyrion, named after the Norse god Tyr. Now, in those earlier recognitions of our family, justice and the sense of equality is oftentimes superimposed on this idea of a balance. And so when we talk about justice in law was supposed to be, and some argue maybe or isn't, when we obtain a balance of right versus wrong. Now, we have to remember that our definitions of right and wrong are particularly very regional. They're very localized to our society or our community, right? So what's right in one place may not be right in another. Conversely, something that's completely wrong in one society may not be so far out there in another. These microcosms of existence kind of sometimes take on their own sets of societal norms, right? Into that community, into that group. So we have to be very careful when assigning the word good or bad. Good and bad, good versus evil, whichever label you want to put on it, has a very limited definition. Now, one might say murder and superiority has no place in any community, and I agree, it doesn't. But there are other things, there are many other things that within the mind may or may not seem wrong to in this community, but in this one it is not. Now, this has been taken to extremes, and this is where we find a lot of modern day drama. Modern day drama occurs when I have a set of standards that may or may not be applicable to the community / society at which I live. So, in other words, I am offended by some of the behaviors around me. Why? Because the people in my community, in my society, may not, obviously not, subscribe to that rule set. So they think this is okay, and therefore, no harm, no foul to them. To you, to us, maybe it may seem offensive. They go on in their daily lives. To them, there hasn't been an infraction. To us, there has been an infraction. And we're carrying that infraction up here. Why? To what advantage does that serve us? Looking forward into our mentality and our mindset rather, what value does carrying this experience hold? Well, okay, maybe we've learned that other people are going to do this. Maybe we've learned that we shouldn't carry this any further than beyond what we can see. There's all types of values. Everyone is going to be a little different. This is our trajectory through our lifetime. It is what it is. When we think about courage, there are a couple of definitions of courage, and we've talked about this before. For those of you who have joined me before, we've talked about this several times, where there is a different, I don't know, definition's the word I'm looking for, but there's maybe a different understanding of courage depending on which way we look. This gets back to our perspective. So our first perspective that we'll look at courage is the intrinsically. Intrinsically is so critical. This is when we look at our own values, our own beliefs, our own understandings with a critical eye. What serves us, what doesn't? What's the kind of person that we want to be? values do we wish to emit, to radiate out to our community, out to our society? These values are intrinsic to us. Now, my great grandfather has a wonderful analogy of this, and he calls it the well of the self. We've spoke about it before, but the well of the self simply is looking intrinsically through the depth of who we are to these values that are a beautiful rock mosaic that exists at the bottom of the well. This beautiful rock mosaic is kind of constructed using a multitude of resources, primarily people with whom we provide authority, some level of authority, are allowed to put in certain rocks. These are their values, and they're putting them in our well. Now, many times this mosaic begins its life with the values instilled by our parents. They're the first figures that we'll really give some level of authority to. Now, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. As we grow older, of course, as we get older, we notice that the age of people with whom we give authority begins to come down. As we reach our teens, we may be accepting values from our peers, those other teenagers around us, our friends, and the like. Now, our values, again, our values against the age of individual with whom we're issuing authority is beginning to come down. Now, modern society has gone even one step further by saying we're going to give authority to some figure that may be on the internet, or maybe in an advertisement, or maybe in a television program, because they're a star, or they're deemed valuable to others. We're going to accept them as some level of authority, and chances are they're on their journey as the same as we are. They're no different, right? So for those of you who may be following the case, we know that the Pope of the monotheistic Catholicism has crossed over. He's moved past his physical form now into his spiritual form. He has ascended to the spiritual realm, where he is now being continuing his existence in his spiritual self. And we think about him for a minute and think about the courage that he had. Now, for those of you who may be a little bit more staunch against monotheism, and particularly Catholicism, as it's a very has a lot of polarity to it with people, this Pope, this latest one, has kind of received a lot of kind of differences. Now, granted, there's been a lot of sins in the past that he can't erase, for sure, nor can he apologize for, really. He had nothing in it, per se. But nonetheless, he really crossed boundaries. He really stepped outside this defined box of that role and began to build a lot of connections through different society. He definitely took on, for the monotheistic practices, a much more peace-loving, peace-appreciating kind of mindset. And that's a really big thing, a really big example of being courageous, of crossing against the boundaries of what had been boxed for eons now. And he was willing to step across those to see and understand a life of spiritual connection beyond the religion, beyond the ridiculousness of the religion. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I am not a monotheist, nor do I subscribe to that, nor do I believe in anything that they teach. I spent 10 years as a pastor, and I The doctrine does not hold water for me. The ideology behind that just falls apart when you start really applying some of the litmus tests that I use in the courage to be me, the courage to understand my journey, my trajectory. Very different. So, the courage to look into ourselves and to put aside the ego, put aside the superiority, the silliness of machoism and all that nonsense, to look past all that and find out what our values truly are. To be loved. That's something that's universal. And as much as many of us have put up these fake walls, and that's what it is, it's a fake wall that says, oh, I don't like people. Why? Because I'm afraid of rejection. I'm afraid of being hurt. And it's understandable. It honestly is. But the better side to ourselves is looking intrinsically and seeing that one of our true values, every human's true value, is to be loved. Every living thing hopes to be loved. Everything does. Even the bear, even the wolf, even the lion on the desert hopes to be loved. It's a core critical value of who we are. Okay? Just being alive gives us this value. So, one of our values is to be loved. Now, once we discover what these values are, then our next step is how do we show that? Well, to be loved, one must love. So, do you love yourself? This is an honest question. A lot of us will start being critical of who we are. Well, I'm too heavy, I'm too old, I'm too tall, I'm too short, I'm too fat, I'm too thin. We start finding holes in who we are. Well, you, believe it or not, like me, are perfect in where we are, where we fit into our trajectory. We started many, many, many moons ago. Well, for some of us, we started as a biological connection between our mother and our father. We then grew. We connected to our spirit. We began to grow and grow and grow. We were then born. We began to live. We lived. And here we are. We're here. Now, many of us will say, oh, well, yeah, but I've made a lot of mistakes. My past is littered with hordes of mistakes that I've made. I've made poor decisions that I made. Well, what can we learn from our past, right? What's our value? Our value is to be loved, right? Well, okay. Let's connect those two, and we figure out that, well, maybe what we should do instead of pushing people away is we should find friends. Well, friends are so hard to come by, and you never know who's fake. You never know who's just trying to has an agenda and they're trying to get one over on us, right? We don't believe. We're having trust issues. What is trust? Well, trust is the supporting energy of hope. Hope is an eternal energy that's given to us by our spiritual self. And hope is the energy that powers who we are. It's another one of those cornerstone pieces within that well of self that is the generation unit of all the energy of what we give, what we offer. Now, many of us will try to cover that up because we don't want to hope for friends. We don't. Why? Because we're afraid of being hurt. We're afraid of being crushed, right? So we'll just tamp that down a little bit, and we'll just say, leave me alone. I don't want other people in my life. Well, in fact, we do. We very much do. Okay? Even today, as I move through my lives and kind of meet with and communicate with all the wonderful, beautiful people of the world, I have that deep, deep, deep desire to be loved, to be appreciated, to be wanted. Everyone does. It's okay. The idea here is that we simply have to understand that there will be people with other agendas, with other reasons for coming into our lives, and these are lessons we are learning. Remember, our journey from birth to leaving our physical form is all about learning how to control the emotional influences within our thought process. For those of you who may not have followed the show in the past, we speak quite frequently of this idea that nowhere in existence can we create the chemistry necessary for our brain to then interpret as emotion. We can't do it anywhere else. Why? Because we need this biological unit to create the chemistry. Remember, the chemistry that is ejected from the heart into the bloodstream, and it goes up to the brain. The brain then compares it against its little recipe sheet and says, oh, okay, I'm feeling this because I can see this chemical composition in my brain. I feel this way. When the memory is stored now of that experience, it's stored with that understanding of this emotion. Okay? So our existence, beginning to end, our existence in this physical form is simply to create these emotional releases, these emotions that alter our perception. Remember, one of the first tasks given, if you will, to these hormones as they come racing into the brain, into our consciousness, is they're there to alter our sensory input of our physical reality. Right? So if we say to ourselves, self, I want to be happy. I want to be gleeful, dance and sing and be joyful. And we set our mind to doing that, we're going to see things that occur, experiences within our lives that match that criteria. Why? Because now the filter is blocking out things that don't meet that criteria. Right? So we're looking past the unwanted stuff. We just look right past it. We focus on those things that bring us joy, bring us peace. Why? Because we've set our sensory input filters to look for those things. And so one of the things that this hormone release is going to do in the bloodstream is it sets our emotional filters. Our emotional filters then alter the way we see reality. Okay? Things will go to support whatever emotional state we have, whatever that is. So if we're angry or bitter or nasty or mean, everything we see will be opportunities to expand upon that emotion. If we then see, conversely, we see love, peace, harmony, joy, comfort, contentment, those things, our reality at which we experience will meet that criteria. All right? So we really do alter the way we see reality. We create our interpretation of the reality at which we experience. And it will meet the criteria of what we've set here. Right? Now, there will be experiences in our lives that will test where we're at. So we decide that we're going to find peace, joy, love, harmony, and all those things. And then we witness something, physical sensory input, energy creation into the filters, of that's contrary to that. And we have then a choice. We can now accept this new energy, paradigm shift, right? We can switch off. Or we simply say, we're looking at the experience from a more joyful, more loving perspective. A prime example, the other evening, for those of you who follow, Sunday night, Sunday night, my mother had a emergency. She was rushed to the hospital um, with breathing issues. Now, obviously, as a physical form, I worry for her. She's elderly to me anyway, um, and that says something, right? I worry about her, right? I worry, oh, could this be the end of her physical form? I mean, that's a conscious thought that goes through my head. I worried about her. Now, she's fine, by the way. If not to put a spoiler in front of the story, but she's fine. But as I thought about her, and as I considered the value that she brings to my life every day, um, I worried for me. But what if I said, wait, my mother, of course, being a little older than I, um, her joints are painful. She has medical conditions. Um, what if I looked at um, her struggles as, as she went to the emergency room, she was able to get some relief from that. Wait a minute. And she, for once, a short period of time anyway, she was without pain. She was without discomfort. She was resting comfortably. And she has faith in the medical community. Therefore, she was comforted, right? She was relaxing. Different perspective. What if we looked at the struggles in our world, our experiences that may seem a little too much at first? What if we looked at them and said, how can what if I look at it a little differently, right? What if I change my perspective on this particular event? How will that change? Being willing to change our perspective a little bit is another form of courage. So, courage and the God tier brings a lot of pieces to our lives that maybe we could investigate a little further and to determine what value that would have in our lives. Sorry, had popcorn for late night snack last night, so popcorn kernels, they get me every time. All right, my friends, as always, if you have questions, if you have struggles, if there is something that's really tripping you up on your journey, by all means, visit my website, norsewhispers.com or akoutlaw.com. And there, scroll all the way to the bottom, look to the left, and you'll see a big orange button that says, ask me a question. Ask. Let's get a dialogue. Let's get a conversation started. And maybe between the two of us, we can find some answers that work for you, that can help you obtain or maintain a better mental space. All right? So, norsewhispers.com. For those of you who haven't heard the message, by all means, feel free to hit up the tip jar. Every little bit goes to help. So I appreciate every little bit that we get. Remember, each and every morning, we also, over here, there, for me anyway, it's over there. We also have live chat available. For those of you who like to throw something out there for discussion, I'm welcome and open to anything that you've got going on in your mind. Again, I'm here to produce a message that you are indeed everything you need to be successful in this life. You can do it. I have faith in you. The gods have faith in you. All the spirits that are surrounding you have faith in you. So, let's be courageous and go forward. All right, my friends. Happy Tears Day. We will see you again tomorrow where we will discuss the god Wotan, or, as he's better known, Odin, and talk about the collection of wisdom, because that's what it's all about, collection of wisdom. So we got a really fancy definition of what wisdom really is. So we'll see you for that again, same time tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Alaska time, and we will see you there. In the meantime, Have a wonderful Tuesday. And I see a bald Viking. Hello, my friend. Thank you for joining me this morning. I look forward to seeing all of you tomorrow. Love and light.